Are the current heavy downpours and flooding a result of ex-cyclone Dineo? Are cyclones a common occurrence in southern African region? Can the floods ravaging several parts of the country be declared a national disaster? What can communities that are exposed to the high risk of flooding do when under threat? What time is it? It's question time. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I'm Alicia Jali, sitting in for Mpotsedu. Now, several parts of the country have been severely hit by torrential rains and flooding, and 3 people are reported to have lost their lives, and 1 is still missing in the Northern Cape. Now, 3 fatalities and several families displaced has been reported in Rustenburg in the northwest. Mpumalanga, KwaZulu-Natal and the Free State are also under siege. Meanwhile, Disaster Management Services has warned that more rains are being forecast and communities are advised to be on very, very high alert. The effects of the ex-cyclone Dineo that hit Mozambique last week and now reported to be wreaking havoc in Botswana is said to be behind these heavy downpours. We are live and taking your calls on these numbers: 089 110 4210. Alternatively, tweet us your comments at Question Time 24. My guests are Mr. Robert Mulaudzi, Media Liaison Officer at the Johannesburg Emergency Management Services. And joining us from our Hatfield studios is Mr. Poseletso Mofokeng, the Senior Forecaster at the South African Weather Service, as well as Dr. Mapaga Tau, who will be joining us later. He is the Deputy Director General for the Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, that is COGTA. Poseletso, let's start with you. A very good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening, Alicia, and good evening to the viewers as well.
All right. Robert, a very good evening to you too.
Good evening and evening to the viewers.
All right. So let's start with you. I mean, what's currently happening to our country? I mean, are such conditions familiar to the Southern African hemisphere?
Indeed, it is quite familiar to have the kind of rainfall that we're experiencing. You would remember that there was tropical cyclone Dineo that was moving in the channel last week on Thursday, and by Friday it made a landfall over the southern Mozambique. Beyond that, it moved through the Limpopo Zimbabwe border, and then it moved to Botswana by the Saturday, and then by Sunday it was actually in Namibia. So that is where it was on Sunday. It came back on Monday. That is why from Monday we started to have a lot of rain over us. That is over the eastern areas of South Africa, when that system actually moved back from Namibia to the central Botswana. So that is where it is at the moment. It is still in Botswana, and we still experience a lot of rain in the eastern areas of South Africa, inclusive of Gauteng, Mpumalanga and Limpopo, as well as the Northern Cape, as you already had pointed out, and the Free State.
Now, Robert, multiple fatalities, about 3 in different parts of the country, have also been reported. Tell us how the rescue mission has been going in trying to salvage the situation.
Throughout the city of Johannesburg, we have actually set up our disaster management centers, joint operational center, which includes other cities departments like JRA, JMPD, and the other EMS and the other relevant city stakeholders, so that we can, as a multi-sectoral team, we can be able to respond to these incidences, because you'll understand most of the incidents had to do with stormwater drainage systems. Some of them you find out that there's a need maybe for our team from JRA to come and deal with the situation. So far we're doing our best. It's we just want to call on our communities to work with us, so that they need to adhere to most of our calls when we send safety messages out there. I think from now going forward, it's high time that our communities or residents, not only in the city of Johannesburg, but I think in South Africa as a whole, to say that we have entered into a rainfall season. So it's the warning messages from the South African Weather Service. Our communities out there need to take these messages seriously. Of course, it's high time that we are all the time prepared for whatever emergency which might occur.
All right. Pusaletso, I mean, do tell us, a lot of people are even wondering what this tropical cyclone is. Do explain to us what was this tropical cyclone? And it was downgraded apparently when it hit South Africa. What do you call it when it's in South Africa? Is it just floods or normal rain?
Well, indeed, what had happened was, in fact, the manner in which we name tropical cyclones, we name them based on the wind strength. So the stronger the wind it is, we move from the depression to the storm, then to the tropical cyclone. So in other words, we have those stages in terms of the wind. Then beyond that, when the system actually made a landfall over the southern Mozambique last week, it actually dropped its strength from tropical cyclone to depression. In other words, it was moving backward in strength. Be that as it may be, we all know what it did in Mozambique as well as in the eastern areas of South Africa. We all know areas in Zanin actually got a lot of impact. Areas in Gaskop got rainfall close to 200 millimeters in a matter of a day. We all know what it did in Botswana as well as it moves today, although it is no longer called a tropical cyclone. So basically what is this system is continuing to do is to produce a lot of rainfall coming in from Botswana all the way to us. And it will remain cloudy generally over South Africa through to the next week.
All right, and let's talk about the education, Pusaletso, when it comes to extreme weather patterns in South Africa. What is your department, the weather department, doing to educate people to try and be cautious about these severe weather patterns in case they happen, because we can never predict them?
I think we will actually predict them, as it is the case all the time. Remember the Neo, before it actually reached Mozambique, it was actually predicted. It was even the path of it was predicted, and the focus was very spot on. So basically what we do is to continue to speak with the public like I'm doing now with you. Beyond that, we also do have our Twitter line that we actually post messages every day. You would remember that SABC has got a very strong relationship with us. So the messages that go there, the warnings on television, on radio, it's actually the messages that we are giving out to actually educate the public. But over and above that, we do have times when we actually conduct, we have the times when we conduct just education to the public. In other words, we can have shows where we can actually have the messages passed through as to what to do when we have the strong winds, what the public should do when we have heavy rain. For example, what motorists should do. As it is currently happening, motorists should actually drive slower. They must be very much more careful because it is raining. The visibility becomes poor when it is raining. And beyond that, it is also not advisable to drive at night, because basically when we have the water in the road, when you are driving at night and at a high speed, it actually tends to create a lot of problems. But so those are the things that we do. There are times when we actually meet the public directly, but obviously the reach when we go direct is actually smaller as compared to when we use the media.
Robert, any safety measures that your department has currently implemented in any eventuality? Yeah,
we've got a very good partnership together with our disaster management team within the city of Johannesburg, where we also in the organization we've got a public education team where we try and go to communities. We are not doing it now because there's floods. In the organization, we've got a public education team whereby we trying to move away from being reactive to response to emergencies. So we believe in making sure that our communities, at least they've got some knowledge as to what is it that they can do when there's an emergency. For instance, the issues of obeying, your local municipalities' bylaws. For instance, of building in a flood line. Those are the things we educate our communities of. The people need to be informed about that. The dangers of staying in those areas. Because most of the time when it's raining, it rains at night, and then most of the people get swept away, while they are fast asleep. So we try and do some community evacuation drills with our communities in those areas, so that, for instance, they can be able to use some whistles to evacuate other, community members in that area and to go to the higher ground. So that is a continuous training we do all the time to make sure that our communities are informed. Of course, the challenge becomes into the motorists. motorists, they tend to be not really listen to our calls mostly, because you find that there are specific areas, for instance, in the city of Johannesburg, where we know that we've got challenges of flooding, and
the low-lying bridges.
We communicate, we relay information in our social media pages everywhere. We're out there on radio and television everywhere. But still, you find that even on the road is barricaded. But you find Alicia still trying to drive through the barricaded area and then force yourself drive through that flooded area, and then we have to come now and rescue her in those areas. So from our side, we really want to urge our motorists to listen to our calls of avoiding those areas.
Okay,
it doesn't matter how how the water levels, but you just use alternative routes so that you can be able to save your life and those who are in the vehicle also.
All right, Pusaleto, I know I have to let you go very quickly at this, but is there any area that you can identify as hotspots, particularly in Johannesburg?
Well, of course, as we all know, we do have those roads like close to William Nicol. We know that in Alexandra we have those areas that are actually being frequented by the floods. Jaskei River, you know also that there are areas like in Diepsloot. We do have those areas that are actually flagged all the time. Moreover, we also have areas in the Sebokeng area. I think when you drive through Soweto Road, that is Soweto High, you are going to see the road just towards Sebokeng, where it is actually it's frequented by floods. Those are the areas that I can actually flag for now. And even in other parts of the country, we do have problems. For example, in the Frankfurt area, we actually experienced a lot of rain in the past few days. We had about 80 millimeters. KZN as well, the coast. Those are the areas that perhaps we can be careful of, especially when we issue the messages. I think Robert has pointed out a very important message that when we issue the warning messages, they have to be taken serious.
Absolutely.
Of course, there is also a problem of people who are creating their own messages and circulating them through the social media. So those are the people who are actually making life difficult for us, because people then get confused in between. But it is important that as the people get the messages, they actually are aware of the source. We are the authority as the South African Weather Service of issuing out the warning messages to the public. So basically they should actually watch out that only the South African Weather Service can actually issue the messages that is of warnings to the public. Otherwise, other messages they should actually verify before they actually start believing, because otherwise it's going to create confusion.
All right, Pusaleto Mofokeng, the senior forecaster at the South African Weather Services, joining us from our Pretoria studios. Let me quickly take Witness from Limpopo on the line. Witness, thank you for staying on the line. A quick comment on today's topic.
Hello, Alicia, how are you?
Good, thank you. Go ahead, Witness.
Thanks. Ndabalog.
Hello?
Hello, Mr. Mlog.
Witness?
No.
He's greeting you. Go ahead, Witness.
Thanks, Mr. Mlog. I'm having an understanding that you are representing Joburg disaster management, and my understanding is that this thing of floods or the cyclones is not only affecting Gauteng, but also with other parts of the country which are severely affected, like in the northwest. So I want to understand as to what is the plan in terms of the national disaster management, and who are the stakeholders involved in terms of this multidisciplinary committee, because I understanding is that it also do the damage in terms of other structures such as housing and whatsoever. And the last year, I want to ask as to how can you advise the citizen to stay alert in such kind of weather conditions.
Witness, thank you so much for your comments and your questions. We're going to answer you shortly after this break. And just a reminder that you can also call us to share your views on the following numbers: 089 110 4210. Question time. We'll be right back. Please don't go away.
If you ask this Irish master whiskey distiller why sometimes whiskey is spelled with an E and sometimes without, he'd say,
oh, to be sure. You feel so good, look. It's the whole thing. They're a back and get off in the whiskey without the E.
Yeah, didn't catch that. But if you asked us the difference, we'd tell you that every whiskey from around the world is spelled without the E, except for Irish and American whiskies. Get a bottle of Ballantine's finest blended Scotch whiskey for $149.99 from Tops at Spar.
Health Talk unpacks healthy tips to help you to practice healthy living lifestyles.
Now, generally, type 1 is found mostly in children and young adults, and with type 2 diabetes is found mainly in the older generation and also with an issue of obesity.
Don't have second portions, and then I've brought this plate model to show that for both meals, your lunch, your dinner, half the plate should be vegetables.
Within sports, we see the spectrum itself. Most often we see minor head contact injuries, we call them.
Right.
But certainly in sports, the one that a lot of attention is paid to is concussion.
You see, you've got something, boom, right, it's uncontrolled. Whereas in soccer, when the guy hits the ball, it's controlled. His neck muscles are controlling it. And that's why they say, for instance, in rugby, the training should be to improve your neck strength.
For more on health, join your host Dr. Selo Motaung every Saturday from 9 to 10 a.m.
Welcome back. You're still watching Question Time. And of course, my guests are Mr. Robert Mulaudzi, the Media Liaison Officer at the Johannesburg Emergency Management Services. And of course, joining us from our Hatfield studios is Dr. Maphaka Tau, the Deputy Director General for Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs. Doctor, a very good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us on Question Time.
Good evening, Alicia, and to the viewers, and good evening, Mr. Mulaudzi.
Evening, Doctor.
All right. So, Robert, we had a question here. He's asking about plans. He seems like a very informed citizen who's also very curious about these very, hectic weather conditions.
Yes.
What can we tell Witness from Limpopo?
I think Witness and everybody within, the country, because I think SABC, all the citizens of the, the Republic, they watch SABC television. All of us in the disaster management sector or emergency service sector, we only take the warning messages we receive from the South African Weather Service seriously. Only that. No, we don't take any other messages from any other
social media tweets
we are not even worried. We are not confused. So what is important is each and every citizen of the Republic must take the messages from South African Weather Service seriously. Of course, why? Because the South African Weather Service has got a good working relationship with all the disaster management centers within the Republic. So it will be easy for a disaster management center in Limpopo to be able to communicate whatever messages, what is it that the community in that area are supposed to do to mitigate some of the emergencies which might occur due to the weather conditions.
Yeah.
So that is what I want to give to Witness, because he sounds like somebody who's
very concerned
informed.
and wants to know.
So there is no confusion about who we are supposed to listen to in situations like this.
Absolutely. Robert, last week on Sunday, there was actually footage that was posted on social media purporting to be things that were happening in Mozambique currently. Yes. And this was footage from 20 years ago. So that can be very misleading to the public. Ayanda from Durban, a quick comment on today's question. Welcome to Question Time.
Hi, Alicia. How are you?
Hi, Ayanda.
Just because of time, I'm just going to be very quick and just to greet your guests there on the show. Very quickly, Alicia, I think most importantly, what needs to happen is that we need to communicate a message, in particular to all the public transport drivers.
Yes.
Because they are the ones who are always insisting in driving in all the flooded areas. We need to get in contact with all the relevant stakeholders to communicate and convey this message, to say that they mustn't insist, because they are carrying people's lives. So they must always ensure that when they are confronted with the flooded areas, they must always be very cautious and also try and not to insist in driving through, but practice any safety and security.
Thank you so much for that caution there, a very great caution. Let's rope in the doctor. Now, doctor, a lot of people want to understand what is COGTA's concerns and role in this whole matter.
Thank you very much, Alicia. A good question indeed. COGTA's concern comes based on the mandate entrusted upon it by the Disaster Management Act of 2002. This is a piece of legislation that enjoins government to coordinate a disaster management system that is founded on the need to ensure prevention, preparedness, and mitigation of disaster risk. It also provides for the need to have effective response capacity in the event of the occurrence of hazards or disasters. It should be pointed out that that act applies to all hazards, being floods, drought, epidemics, and also anthropogenic or human-induced hazards.
All right. So, what are you? Is there any way that COGTA is actually assisting the affected communities, Doctor?
Yes, quite a lot. As my colleagues have just taken you through the measures that are put in place.
Okay,
this
so
is
working
based
hand
on
in hand with
collaboration
the
and coordination.
Teams. All right, Doctor, I was asking if you are, so it means you're working hand in hand with the rescue teams.
Exactly. We work hand in hand with them, both from the pre-disaster stages. We plan together, develop plans, and when there's incidences, we work together in responding to those incidences.
But Doctor, has this been declared a national disaster at this stage? Is it going to be declared a national disaster? Can you give us that answer?
Well, you'll appreciate that our piece of legislation is one that recognizes the fact that when an incident has occurred, stakeholders should still have the opportunity to activate measures within their capacity to deal with that incident before you can go into declaring a disaster. So at this stage, indications are that we are managing the situation, and indeed we are managing the situation working with various stakeholders, and the relevant section of the Act that enjoins us to use our resources to manage the situation are still being applied.
All right. So
we are not at the stage of declaring a state of disaster.
All right. So everything is under control, Robert. But I mean, let's go back to Ayanda's point, a very valid point there. He says maybe other means need to be given to the public transporters or the people that carry other lives on the roads, because it seems like they just want to go ahead and deliver that load and make the 10,000 rand that you have to bring back home to the taxi owner or the bus owner.
No, I think Alicia, it's not about us and them. I think we are all, the citizens of the Republic. All of us, we are to be blamed. We cannot really point finger to one specific individual, because all of us were residents in the Republic. So all of us have got a responsibility to look after each other and look after ourselves. So the message goes to everyone. You cannot sit here and direct a message to one all of us, because there are incidences which involves private vehicles. Then who's gonna do we have an association of private motorists? We don't have that. So now let's just address all the residents within the Republic, to say each and every one of us, because the disaster is not only in Johannesburg, it's everywhere in Limpopo, in the Northwest, everywhere. So all of us, wherever we are, you find that there is a disaster management center in that area. There's a local emergency services, which has got a public education section where they're educating people about what is it that they're supposed to do.
Okay, Robert, let me take another caller from Limpopo. Tseleng, thank you so much for staying on the line. A quick comment on today's topic. Tseleng, are you still on the line?
Yes, I am, ma'am.
Yes, please go ahead with your... All right, please go ahead with your quick comment, Zeling.
Thank you for taking my call. I just wanted to find out where is Port Ready. That's all. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, unfortunately, that's not related to the show. But thank you so much, Dr. Tao from our Hatfield studios. Thank you so much. And Mr. Robert Mulaudzi, thank you so much for joining us. That was question time for today. A big thank you to my guests and for you at home for watching and calling and giving us that feedback. Your primetime news are up next. I see Peter getting ready. I'll see you again soon. Goodbye.